Welcome to the Honor It All podcast. I'm Honor Garrett, your host, and we're here to honor all that is good in the world. Each podcast, I interview top professionals around the globe who are making a difference, impacting lives, and creating positive change. Today, our guest is Tamra Andress. And if you don't know Tamra, you're in for a real treat. She is a rising thought leader in spiritual entrepreneurship. She's a best-selling author, an ordained minister, and a personal and professional development coach. But that's not even scraping the surface of her many talents. Tamra's Fit and Faith podcast is globally ranked, tapping the spiritual, religious, and the business charts. Her company, Fit and Faith Media, is a business and broadcasting company supporting founders, innovators, trailblazers, obviously fit, F-I-T, with podcasting production, book publishing, e-course integration, and coaching program implementation. That is like an entrepreneur's dream person to know. But what I love most about Tamra is her energy. To be in her presence is, like when you're wearing a coat and you put your hand in a $20 bill just shows up. I mean, she literally just makes your day better. So Tamra, I'm so excited to have you here on the Honor It All podcast. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much. What an introduction. That's amazing. I'll never forget that analogy. I'm the extra 20 you find in your pocket on a bad rainy day.
Exactly. You're just that spark. And I just remember when we first met, and I think it's the power of really just reaching out to people. And you responded to something where I was talking about faith and the whole energy world, because how do you be a Christian and then believe in energy at the same time? And I loved our discussion because we both love the Lord, but we know that there's more because God created it all, right?
Yeah.
So I've been doing some research on that, and I came across a book called Splankna, and it really helped me understand that, you know what, God created everything. So energy in and of itself is a good thing. There's nothing wrong with energy, and he manifests as things. It's all over the Bible. However, it can be taken the wrong way, just like anything can be taken out of context.
100%.
So
I think that's where a lot of people, they skew it. And then once it gets skewed in one direction and somebody adopts that understanding, that's how movements are made, right? That's how the Roman Catholic Church was established, right? Somebody had a perspective, they had a loud enough voice, and they had a cohort of people who were willing to stand alongside them in the belief system and the constructs and confines of their understanding of denomination. And denominations have since broken out and broken off across the world in this way. And ultimately, if we go back to the root of it all, and that's where you and I were having our conversation, is like the root of all of these ideologies that people are studying or practicing or talking about, even the spiritual being of God that's been transversed into so many different pieces, idols, places, right, is the knowing that it all started with him. And so the fact that we are attuned to be curious about it is God in and of itself. The fact that we have intuition towards something is God in and of himself. And so I just think it's amazing how he has rooted us so granularly with the understanding of these things. And I love the shift that society is making towards understanding that there is a parallel and that science and Christianity are connected with intention. And that's God's design.
Yeah, it really gives me chills, because I realize and I believe it's part of faith. You can't see faith. It's a feeling, it's a belief, it does make its way manifest so you can see it, but I love how it's all coming together. But so that's how we met. But really, honestly, Tamra, I just want to get personal.
Yeah, let's do it.
I want to know, I believe everyone has a story that really helps and it really shapes who they are becoming. And you have a book called Always Becoming. So and I can't wait to read it. Yes, show everybody. Okay, that's awesome.
I'm so excited about it. It was such a fun in the process making, and I am one of those people, I'm a visual learner for the most part, so much so that when God and I have conversations, it's very vision oriented. He shows me something, I respond with how I would hope that it would turn to be or look, or how I imagine it would be, and he responds back. And so whenever I create anything, I want it to be aesthetically pleasing to the eye, but I also want it to have a bunch of innuendos. I want people to be curious. I want people to remove the veil, if you will. And a part of that is in the space of vulnerability. And so always becoming, the subtitle is Sex, Shame, and Love, which in and of itself is intriguing. But if you look at the title, the sex and shame are lowercase based on the secular lens of what they are, and love is capitalized. And that's because it's alluding to the greatest love that we all have, and that's the love of the Father and the love that lives within us, which is, deemed through birth and deemed through the beginning of time, which goes back to what we were just talking about. But faith, if we want to parallel the first part of this conversation to the book, was really where it all started. I have had church hurt in the past, if you've heard of this or not, and that stemmed out of an experience in high school where I was a part of Young Life, which is a youth leadership program through high schools. A lot of people are familiar with it. And I was actually being promiscuous on the side. So I was a leader in the light and not so much in the dark. And when that was happening, it was living the two lives, right? And I thought that this was something new, that I was choosing this life out of my own free will at this point. And knowing too, I was wearing a purity ring from my dad, right? So there was like all this conflict that was happening. And this is just in the heart and head space of a 16, 17, 18-year-old, right? So if you want to find where the roots of those are, you have to go back. And if you want to see how it's going to flourish thereafter or decay thereafter, depending on the route that is taken, the why and the road, you can follow my story. And so the beginning part of my story, I didn't actually even know, because I had suppressed so much. This dark and light experience that we all have in our lives was something that had been coming after me since I was 2.5. And that did not unfold until I was 29 in therapy, that I even recognized or remembered any of it. And if you ask my siblings today, whether it was good memories or bad, I have the worst memory. They're like, how do you not remember that? How do you not remember that? And it's because it was a deflection mechanism and a suppression mechanism for me to just continue to coast through life, because of the shame that I was carrying around being sexually abused when I was almost 3 in the backyard of my house, in our play set, by a little one who was also looked like a man, seemed like a man to me, but had a mental handicap. And so he was a teenager, and it always felt wrong, but it was all I knew to be right, right? And I'd never told anyone, and it ended up progressing into coming into pornography when I was really young in hide and seek. Then thereafter, coming into cyber sex through AOL dial-up internet, then meeting the wrong boys in high school. That then led to this experience where I was a senior in high school, and no one at this point really knew that there was any sort of duality. And I would say a mean girl, if you will, decided to let it all out when she found out what was going on. And 3 months before my graduation, I lost all of my friends. I was no longer welcomed to the organization to come and speak or lead. It was truly my identity. And so that was the first time in my life where I struggled with identity. And I think we go through many seasons of life where identity is a culture shock experience. Motherhood is a good one to talk through when you think of identity shifting. But at that point, that was really the biggest why in the road of which way do I go? And I knew that God, faith was pulling me, but I didn't have a relationship with him. All I knew was religion. I knew the songs, I knew the scripture, but I had never had an encounter. And so everything that I have learned since turning 29 thereafter, so I'm almost 6 years into that experience of relational Jesus, relational Christianity, personal expression of faith, my whole life has changed. And it was because of actually going back and finding the rooted systems, and also understanding that through it all, he was running recklessly for me. And until I had that experience where I was literally in my living room and he was looking at me in the eyes, because he had turned my chin from downcast, looking at my feet, just crying those nasty tears. And he said, I see you, I love you, or I see you, I know you, and I still love you. And
Mm.
that word still is really the wholeness of who I am today, is the be still and know that I am God, and be still and know that you are loved no matter where you are in your life right now.
That's so powerful. I mean, and it sounds like you could have easily chosen a different path. You could have easily chosen not to turn things around or go to God. And was there a particular moment, or was that particular moment that you just knew?
No, so I did actually choose the prodigal way. So high school to 29, there's a big gap right there, right? So I lived on my own accord. I went to college and I still was struggling between light and dark. There's even a college right near us that has light side and dark side. It was Radford University. And I always thought that that was so interesting. Why would you want to ever live on the dark side? But that's truly where a lot of kids in that identity era are. They don't know who they are, so they're trying to fit in. They don't know what they're supposed to be, so they're trying all of the different things, and truly just grasping for freedom. But freedom in the way of the world is very different than freedom through the lens of Christ. And so in that, I met my husband in my prodigal season, and he was just truly a Prince Charming. I mean, I can see him right now just walking through my door in my apartment complex, and he was carrying a 6-pack of Modelo, which in college, that's like, whoa, who's this guy? He's not carrying Natty Light or Bud Light, right? And I remember he was older and wiser, and we literally sat in the kitchen and we just talked all night long. We called my dad during that first conversation. He was just such a sweetheart, and I knew that there was something that struck me different. One, because no pun intended to your podcast, but he honored me. He honored me as a woman. He honored me as a friend and just a human. And we were just friends for about a year. And then when we started officially seeing each other, the guy did not kiss me for 4 months. And to go from the other way of life to that was
Yeah.
very frustrating, but also very intriguing. And also how I know we will guide our children into relationship, into that understanding of courting and truly knowing someone. But even in the knowing, he didn't know all of the past, because like I said, I didn't know all of my past. And so even into marriage, even into motherhood, all of these back and forth, like, why am I being drawn into the dark when I am living the American dream?
Mhm.
Right? I've got the white picket fence. I've got the 2 nice cars. We're the youngest family in the neighborhood. I've got 2 entrepreneurial passions that are thriving, one that's a global brick and mortar, and one that's a local brick and mortar. And I literally couldn't feel other than the thriving piece of entrepreneurship, the high and low, the adrenaline rush of what that feels like to own a business. And again, still suppressing, using natural things that everybody's okay with nowadays. Like, you can go shopping and you can suppress, right? Like, that's an addiction. You can get on social and you can scroll, and it wasn't as popular 6 years ago, but it was definitely starting. You can go and drink, and it's totally fine to be drinking all the time, every night, right? This is all things that even the suppression of media, right? Everyone Netflix and chills like way early, and then even into their marriages, they're watching TV more than they're talking or making eye contact. And so I was just practicing what I saw everybody else do, until it came to that other why in the road, which is what you learn about in my book. Ultimately, it was the choice between being a mom and a wife or being an entrepreneur. And I realized in a very quick moment, when I pulled into my driveway after a nearly 60-hour or 70-hour work week, my barely waddling and just weaned 9-month-old, instead of coming running to me as I would hope, went running to her dada. And I just thought to myself, is this what I want my tombstone to say? Is it going to say entrepreneur? No, nobody's does, no matter how successful, quote unquote, you are. And so I changed my ways, and in changing your ways, that's repentance, right? Repentance and surrender. They've got a bad rap when it comes to religion. But ultimately, it's just a release of control, and it's a change of mind. And I changed my mind pretty quickly, but I needed a lot of help to stay there. And so therapy, that's when I went after my ordination and minister's licensing, because I just needed to know. I just needed answers. And so I wasn't one of those people who were like, it's time for you to go to Bible school. It was out of desperation that I was seeking. And in that desperation, I was found.
I think so many people can resonate with exactly what you struggled with growing up. Not exactly, but we all have that dual. I think sometimes you feel like you're living a double life.
Yeah.
Or you just wish people really knew you. And I always say because I always dated bad boys. And I always say my husband was the first nice boy I ever liked.
Yeah,
So
I'm right there with you, sister.
he was the first nice boy that I ever liked. So I'm so grateful for my husband, because that's where my Christian faith grew, not because of him, but he brought something out of me that really made me curious. And but I know not only just growing up, this world of entrepreneurship, this world of trying to make something more of ourselves, but in just knowing that God has something more for us, but having that balance, it seems like you're doing so many things. Like, how do you balance it?
Yeah. So I don't know if you've heard this before, but I say it often that balance is a lie. And that's coming from the fact that I was a gymnast from 16 years, and I never, ever in any competition or even in practice ever landed a 10.0, ever. And that's what the entire concept of the sport is to get perfection, right? And we're taught this in a lot of different realms of life, whether sports, it could be academics. You want to get the A++, right? The 100 plus more. I mean, I had friends who graduated with 4.6. I'm like, how is that even possible? I thought the cap was 4.0,
Exactly.
right? So the level of perfectionism is now just constantly being maximized in our lens, in our eyes, sight, in our heart even. We're yearning for something more, but it was never meant to be filled by anything on the exterior. So when you think of balance and you know that it's not possible, I can't possibly hit that 10.0, I've shifted my ideas to alignment. And so alignment is this understanding of rather looking on the exterior of how things are, understanding vertically, who am I and how am I operating right now? And that comes through the mind, the body, the soul, and the spirit. And this is where the idea of Fit and Faith and the podcast really stemmed from. Is I went on this journey as I went through my ordination, as I went to a year-long worship school to understand the heart of worship and why God desires us to be in that space of praise. I've always loved music, and there's so much more. I'm not a singer and I'm not a musician, but I will be front row worshiping every time there's sound on or dancing. And so I wanted to know how all of this is integrated. And because of my gymnastics history, and my parents were quite the health nuts growing up, marathon runners and things like that, fitness had always been really ingrained in my life. But because of my traumas, everything that I knew about my mind and my body was exterior. Everything was body image, everything was mirror driven, everything was you are meant to please. I even thought Eve was made for man, and that's just not the case. That's Eve and Adam are equally yoked, right? But I always thought that I was made as a woman to eventually be a mother, just to bear more children and to do so as a trophy wife. That's truly just what I believed and what I saw and what I understood, even biblically. And so when I think of balance now and I think about alignment, I think about how can I vertically be in tune with my truest identity? My truest identity has nothing to do with what's going on around me. It has everything to do with what's happening in this moment right now. Where is your head? Where is your heart? Where is your health? Where is your home? And then finally, what's happening in your handbag? Right? The financial piece, the abundance piece, the secular piece that so many people are thinking about, that comes at the finite. But what's beautiful about that is even in your vertical alignment, I don't have to strive. I don't have to go after perfectionism. I don't have to try and balance anything, because today is the day before I go out to this conference in Kentucky, and I have hour by hour packed out. But I made sure in my schedule that I was going to have 4 dedicated hours with my kids, right? Does that mean that I am more balanced than anybody else? No, because yesterday I saw them for 15 minutes before they went to bed, right? And so every day is a different conversation about alignment, but balance has to be put to the shelf, because that's simply going to put us all into a place of perfectionism and striving, which is not where God would have us be when he says, be still and know. Just because I'm moving a million miles a minute doesn't mean that my spirit is not still. It's a vertical alignment before you horizontally serve. That is my passion, and where I relearned what is fitness, why is my body matter, and knowing that I can still be well and whole and physically fit, but that I'm doing so as a vessel to serve and honor God, not to do so for man or even to do so for myself.
That is such an amazing shift compared to what a lot of people do. And we're on this hamster wheel, trying and striving so hard to make it all work, because we have the desire to help our family and to have this abundant life. But we're making it so hard, or we're just not starting with the right foundation. So
yeah, and I think one of the key things as you're saying that is, I studied a lot the Proverbs 31 woman and what she's doing. And she's waking up before the sun rises, and she's putting all of the things. She has multiple businesses. If you read through Proverbs 31, you'll see that she's an entrepreneur in and of itself. She's also the head of the home. She's stewarding the home. She's got her husband, who's the provider, who's going to go out and make what we know to be like have a living or have a job. But she's already doing that before he's even waking up. And so I wanted to emulate, how can I use this fervor and these desires within me and still steward my home and my relationships, specifically my marriage and my children, really well. And so it just takes a different attuning than what the world says. And it's why I think entrepreneurship specifically for women is such a beautiful calling and a space of freedom that everyone should explore. And why I have a program called the Joyful Entrepreneur Program. And it takes people through ideation, their God dream, that desire, into a launch in 8 weeks. And I called it Joyful Entrepreneur because a lot of people see entrepreneurship even as this striving or this new level of identity, this title that they want, or this label that they want. And because of my past, I know that it has nothing to do with entrepreneurship and everything to do with the joy of the Lord, with the premise of that rock that you mentioned, instead of putting it on that shifting sand. And so abundance, prosperity, money, all of those things, they stem from joy, because joy is a part of the fruit of the Spirit that is aligned to who God calls you to be. You're beautifully and wonderfully made. He is a joyous Father, and therefore we have access to joy every single day. So when people see me smiling now, I always get to credit God, where before the smile I thought was like my only gift. They would always say, you light up a room when you come in, but I had no idea that that was a God thing. I thought that was a man-made thing. I thought that was my stepping into my strength rather than my stepping into what God had me, willed me into, and created me to be for other people.
Wow. So I know there's so many women out there that are struggling right now because they want that business. They want to make a difference. They want to make an impact, but they're just completely overwhelmed. So how do you help women, or do you have a program? Because I know you have the Joy one. Don't you have something else coming up?
I do, yeah. So my mastermind is launching. It's called the Harvest Mastermind, and it's 2 very different programs. So when I first got started, my passion was to see people in the launch phase, right? To really get started and go. And in the process of doing that, I was cultivating everything with Fit and Faith Media, Fit and Faith Podcast, my book, all of this. And the people in this zone were like, wait, I want to come with you, right? I want to go where you're going. You're still teaching me foundation, and I want to get where you are. And so that's really where the mastermind stem from, is to take people from not just the launch phase, but once they're actually operating and flowing. All of my one-on-one clients from that are now rolling into the mastermind so that they can get the higher level of excellence and access, not only to my team that's been developed, who is incredible, but also to the team of experts that's around me. I've got speaking coaches, I've got author and writing coaches, I've got all of these people who have partnered to create the area that I am currently existing in, and I'm constantly stepping into larger zones of excellence and geniuses in order to fuel the people that are coming behind me, because I really feel that's what it's about. I could go a bunch of places, but if I'm not bringing people with me, I'm not actually discipling anyone, and that's a part of my calling. But I want to speak specifically to that conversation of overwhelm versus joy, because it doesn't matter if you're just starting out and you feel totally overwhelmed by any of the lingo that people are using, or you're 3 years in and you're doing phenomenally and you're making 10, 25, 50K a month. They're both overwhelming, but in totally different ways. And you think that you experiencing one versus the other, like, I would love to go back to startup phase, because startup phase, while it's overwhelming, I'm in stride there. Like, I've started so many businesses. I'm like, this is awesome, let's go. But when it comes to, like, I have to make money, I have to manage a team, other people are getting fed on their family before mine are. Profit first, don't do that. But that's how I have constructed my business intentionally, because of the way that my husband, who is also an entrepreneur, has created our family finances. But it's the overwhelm versus the joy, right? Overwhelm is balance. Overwhelm is striving. Overwhelm is, I want to attain something exteriorly so that I can do something for someone else. And it could be that you have a phenomenal idea. It could be that you want to even start a nonprofit or a ministry, and it's doing from, like, the goodness of your heart, and it's a God will. But God does not call you to a heavy burden. He calls you to things that are light. And so in order for you to experience entrepreneurship in light, you have to have that vertical piece first. And so I do a lot of work around this 3 thumbprint idea of being, brand, and then business. Being is your identity. Brand is who other people experience you are through your rooted identity, and then you build a business. But a lot of people do it backwards. They're like, I want to build a business. And now, oh, I have to do a brand. Okay, let's put all those pieces in to create the brand. And then somewhere along the way, whether it's thriving or they're just surviving, they crash and burn. That was my story. And so I knew that the flip of the script was the foundation of every successful business, whatever success means to you. And ultimately, it always goes back to identity.
What do you tell all those people who scroll all over social media, like, oh, here's a freebie, here's a freebie, here's a freebie, and they have all of this information, but there's no system? How is yours different? Obviously, it is different. It sounds exciting, amazing.
Yeah. So that's called shiny light syndrome. And I had it for a very long time. And now I've gotten to the point where I like harness my email address. Like, I do not allow people to have my email address. I have a junk email address that I will do swipe file research, which is me just literally wanting to know what other people are doing. So I'll put that email in. I never actually even probably consume what it is that they're serving, but I'm watching the system. How are they setting this up? Is it seamless? Do they have an autopilot email drip campaign that's coming afterwards? I am just curious at this point. How is it working for them? And so that's really where that 8-week program comes into play, is we systemize all of the ideas. We put everything into a methodology and into a flow, because joy and flow are connected. When you're operating in flow, and this is a mind, body, soul, spirit experience, where you're realizing, I am standing in my zone of genius. I am doing this because it's gift and talent from God, rather than me trying to put a square peg into a round hole, which a lot of us do when we think we have a good idea. And so operating in flow and joy allows this program to get you to a place that you become a magnet rather than going fishing, right? Like fishing, you're like, oh my God, I got to go into social media. There's millions and billions of people hanging out here, and I just am trying to catch one today, right? What happens next? You catch the one. Now you got to go and you got to catch another one, right? And instead of that, what does Jesus do for Peter? and John, right? Peter and John. Yeah. He actually says, come with me and I will make you fishers of men. How does he do that? Why does he do that? One, he shows them in the flesh, I can give you all the fish that you want, which is the abundance and prosperity God that we seek. So don't think that you serve a God that is poor. That's a huge mentality that the ministry and the church has put over people. You are earned, you are valued, you are worthy, and therefore there is a financial piece that is a part of that prosperity and abundance. But when he says, come with me and I will make you fishers of men, he is actually embedding in them the truth. And when he embeds in them the truth becomes a light and the light is flipped on. And when somebody is in the dark, what do they want? They want light.
Absolutely.
And so we now become a magnet to people. Why are you so energized? How do you have this joy? What is it that you're doing that you look to be moving on this forward, upward trajectory that I can't seem to do because I'm still on the rat wheel? All I get to do is point them to God.
Yeah, that's awesome. So tell me, what, through all of your experiences, what would you say is your biggest life lesson?
The grass is not greener on the other side. It's greener where you water it.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's, comparison is a thief of joy. I'm sure you've heard that before. And we live in a society of comparison on all fronts. And so we're constantly looking at other people's yards. I mean, just think about it for Halloween or Thanksgiving or Christmas is about to come up, and you actually take your car and you pile your family in and you say, let's go look at everyone else's lights. And it's fun, right? And it's great. And you're like, wow, that's amazing. Oh, I wish we did this. Mama, why don't you decorate as much as they do? Right. And this is something as a mom I've literally dealt with and tried to understand and unpack Halloween and why we don't put up skeletons and ghouls and goblins and all of that.
Right.
And I'll decorate and I'll trick or treat with you, but this is different, right? How do you then take what the world has told you to do and shift it, flip the script on it, and help them understand that what we do in our home might look really different than everybody else? What you do in your business might be really different than everybody else. You might not be on social media 5 times a day, every single day. And that's okay. If that's not your joy, if that's sucking you dry, that's not your home. Home is where the heart is. Home is where you're able to go and rest and be and fuel. And if you don't have a safe haven in those spaces, you can't go out and expect that the fish are just going to come. You have to have bait, and bait comes from a wellspring.
That's beautiful. And because my husband is a football coach, I've grown up with competition. We got to be the best. We got to win. We got to, you got to win the game. And I'm trying to have this shift of, it's not about competition. It's not about comparison. It's about creating.
Yeah.
God made us these creative beings, and it's all inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we need to figure out how to bring that out. And obviously that's focusing on him. And so,
well, and it's also the recognition. And as you're saying the word creating, I'm immediately going to art, and I love art in so many realms. And it's like thinking of that mosaic, right? Because that's really where we probably sit within the creativity realm of entrepreneurship. It feels like you have all these things that you could do, and they're all broken in front of you, and like, ooh, this color is pretty. Let me put this one up today, right? And as you're doing that, you're actually realizing that there's missing pieces, and the missing pieces are the community. The missing pieces are the collaborators. And so it's not about that competition. It's saying, what piece do you have? How interesting that could look, that could work right here. And that's where those partnerships and strategic alliances have to come into play. So no different than us having this conversation here. You could just say, I'm going to have a podcast all about me. And I'm going to talk every single week, and nobody else is going to have access to anything except for my heart and head, which is fine. There's plenty of podcasts that are successful that do that. But ultimately, it's this understanding that like you can't serve in the abundance of how you're intended to serve unless we are going back and forth, passing the ball to say, what do you got? Oh, try this shot. Oh, try this experience, right? And then together we create something brand new. And that is what the family of Christ and the body of Christ is supposed to do, because I am really good at using my left hand. I cannot use my right hand. And yet we're intended to work together with purpose and intentionality, but we have to release that comparison and we have to release that competition.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like if you are a somewhat established entrepreneur, that this Harvest Mastermind that you have coming up is really a great idea. How do people find you and find out about it? And when does it start?
Yeah, so it's starting soon. It's actually launches on November 15th, but we've made it an open enrollment until the 12 seats are filled. So we are making it very small with intention to really create a family bond and a unit over the course of the next year. It's a discipleship program just as much as it is an entrepreneurship program. And I haven't put that out to anybody else, but because we're having this conversation, I know the root of it. So we're actually going to be going through like the Prayer Empowered Entrepreneur Program in conjunction with it, which is a 31-day devotional that we're extending over the 12 months. We'll also be going through the Female Entrepreneur Playbook that I just released alongside 20 other authors. So we're going to go not chapter by chapter, but question by question. And we'll be developing everything from your system development to your strategic alliances and how you're showing up in the world in that realm, to how are you getting on stages and are you actually creating the right path for you, or are you trying to go after somebody else's path? We'll also have 2 in-person retreats throughout the year, which will bring those 12 women together, one of which will be dedicated to all of their speaking. So whether you're doing a YouTube channel, whether you're creating a Facebook Live, or you're doing a podcast, that will be cultivated over the weekend. And then also an e-course development. So you'll actually come, we'll ideate the entire e-course. All of the training modules will be built out before you get to the course. And when we're there for the retreat, we'll actually do all of the video, all of the implementation and branding photography for both. So I am very much about allowing people to get all of the things done because I know what it's like. I know that everyone's in this struggle for balance. And if we can create the intentionality versus the busyness in our life, which is something I'm talking about this weekend, so much more comes to fruition. And God is able to do so much more because we're not distracted. We are focused on what it is that He's calling us to.
That is beautiful. I mean, that just sounds like an amazing experience and really could transform your entire business and your life within a year.
Oh yeah. And it did for me. And I think that's the biggest part of it is to recognize a lot of people will create programs because it's like fills a void in the market. And I never teach people to do that. When someone comes to me and we're curating in the joyful or in one-on-one experience and we're like, let's vision cast together. What does God put in your heart? And I want to know all of it, right? I don't want you to just be like, well, I think I'm going to start a coaching program. No. Take me 20 years down the road. What does that look like? How do you expect to show up? Some people are like, I just want to travel the world and speak. Awesome. So what are we going to do to get you to that place? There has to be a sense of social authority that's built. Your expertise has to be built. You have to have that authorship probably connected to it of some sort, whether you're a writer or a speaker. So really helping people understand that it's not about where you're going next year. It's where you're going 20, 30, 40, 60 years from now. And actually having put my feet on the ground and done it is very different than what a lot of other masterminds are doing.
That is amazing. Well, so what besides that, you have something coming up this weekend, and I'm so excited and feel so blessed to have the opportunity to be in Kentucky, thanks to Dr. Sean Shapiro, and you guys have put an incredible event together. Do you want to tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Our audience.
Grow Your Business for God's Sake conference. And it's actually the second conference. Glenn Lundy, who is co-hosting the experience with me, threw one in 2019, pre-world, whatever you want to call it. There's just like a gap in the years, right? But it was actually my best year was in 2020. So I think that there's a fruit to what God's doing in the hearts of His people. And this is just the offshoot of the 2020-2021 pandemic season, right? It's bringing people together. It's allowing people to raise the bar of excellence and come back into that rooted system and the truth of why they're doing what they're doing. So we're bringing people from around the globe to be speaking into the lives. And these are very successful, high earning entrepreneurs, but also people who love the Lord. And I think without one or the other, you're actually either only hosting a business conference or you're only hosting a church conference. And what I love for people to understand is that ministry is business and business is ministry. It's the same thing. If you're showing up and saying, I want to serve in this way, you yourself are the church. And we know this biblically, that the confines of church are not in four walls. The church is implanted in you. And therefore, we are activating people to go out and stand in purpose, on purpose, and understanding that it doesn't happen alone. It's why we believe in the energy, so taking it to full circle to our conversation earlier, of being in the room with people who are willing and capable and already raising the bar in their own lives. So you can see the symmetry and the ability to do the exact same thing, because we are all able and we are all called. Nobody is different. It's just a difference in activation. And that's really my heart, is purpose activation for people. And so it's going to be incredible. It's going to be not just a conference where people are speaking at you. You're going to be speaking as well. So that part's going to be really exciting. There's so many entertainers that are coming to keep you on your feet, and also keep you energized. And that's that piece of music and inspiration that I think is really important, because we're all creative. And our outlets to do that are so unique. And so we've brought some really unique people in who are going to be showcasing how they are coaches and speakers and teachers and educators, while also still musicians and artists. So it's going to be really incredible.
So what do people need to do if they are like,
yeah, so you can, if you are able, you can go right now to growforgod.com and come and join us in Lexington, Kentucky on November 5th, 6th, and 7th. If you're not, but you're like, I have to have a piece of this, you can come and join us virtually around the globe. There will be people involved. And so we're excited to have that opportunity. And then if you're busy, because it's literally last minute, and I'm going to say intentional and not busy, you've got plans and you are planning to be intentional with the people that you're spending time with, then you can get the conference recordings and you can press play at any time, any day of the week, forevermore, on every single speaker that's coming.
Well, you heard it, guys. And everything about this podcast, about Tamra, what she does, the programs she has, how to get in contact with her, I will have it all in the show notes, whether it's on YouTube or the podcast, or however you happen to stumble upon me and us today. I want to ask you two more things quickly. What's on the horizon? You are always thinking and have such an amazing thought process of looking to the future. Do you have any big things coming up for yourself?
Yeah, so Fit Media, which you mentioned in my initial bio, that is a newly launched company that established when I brought this book out. So I actually published my book under my own publishing. It's called Fit Pressed. And so there's Fit Press, there's Fit Publishing, which is with the podcasting, and there's Fit eCourse and coaching. And so each area of the entities that we mentioned are coming to life next year. I've already been doing this work, but I know that there are more messages that need to get out there. And I am super excited to help authors, specifically Christian authors, bring their messages to light, and do so with a white glove experience, so that they don't feel stuck in the process or inhibited by big name publishers or agents that are trying to steal a dollar. I don't worry about royalties. They're all yours, every penny. I just help you through the process to get onto that bestsellers list and get you activated into the community as an author, that then can take you to the stages and the courses and the business that you really want to have.
That's so exciting. I think I've had chills halfway through our interview, just of what you're doing. But Tamra, I love to ask the same question to every guest as I end my podcast. This is called the Honor It All podcast. So what are you choosing to honor today?
What a great question today, because I could think of so many for life. But today, I'm going to honor my voice. I have not been feeling very well the last couple of days, and I know that it's run down, and I need it. I can already hear it like kind of going, and I'm going to be on stage for the next 3 days. So I'm going to honor my voice and the message that God's giving me for the week by getting really silent, which is really hard for me. So for the remainder of the day, I'm gonna really still myself and my voice. So that's where I'm going to go with that today. I appreciate that question and that conviction. I always come to every experience, and you listen to my podcast, so you hear this, as every experience when it comes to podcasting, I come with open hands of what can I learn right? And so while I'm coming to share, I always want to learn from the person that I'm with. And so this question, what can I honor today, is really special. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's a perfect way to complete this episode. We want you to go honor your voice and yourself and get rest. So thank you. This has been a wonderful episode with, to me, the superstar, Tamra Andress. Thank you, Tamra. Until next time, remember, we are not promised tomorrow. So be present today. That is the gift. And take time to honor it all. Thank you, Tamra.
Amen. Thank you, sister.